No. No more interruptions. Hello and welcome one and all to the video you have been waiting for. Weapon synergies, tips and tricks, playstyles, and other cool stuff of Limbo. So before we start, I would ask you to go watch the other video that I made about how to use Limbo. In this video I will be going over some things about Limbo's playstyle and weapons that you can use with Limbo, but I'm not going to go over Limbo's powers. So, if you didn't see the first video, I would suggest to go watch that video first, and I will link that video down in the description. But if you have watched it, then let's get started, little Timmy. So let's get the most opinionated stuff out of the way first, and that is playstyles. My specific playstyle with Limbo is, I just basically use Limbo's passive rolling ability to dodge in and out of the rift and shoot at the enemies, then dodge back in the rift, using Limbo's first ability to knock down enemies and then to dodge in the rift and quickly kill the knockdowned target, and the other cool stuff that I have already explained about Limbo's powers and the synergies of those powers. The idea of my playstyle is to minimize being on the same plane as enemies. You got that, little Timmy? Alright, good. On to the next point. So little Timmy, here we are, finally going to talk about weapon synergies. So what is my loadout like when I'm using Limbo? Well, let's start with what kind of primary weapon that you would want to bring with your Limbo. Well, just like I explained before, of what kind of playstyle that I have, usually for my primary, I would have a weapon that does a lot of damage in a single shot, like a sniper rifle or a shotgun like the Corinth. Now let's talk about primaries that are good for stasis setups. Well, launchers or weapons that have AoE damage are some good choices. Weapons that have punch through are a good choice too, and the same can be said about secondaries. But for your loadout you would want one or the other. Have a primary weapon for if dodging or stasis setups, and have a secondary this is the opposite or your primary. So what about melee weapons? Well, you would want your melee weapon to be built for high damage or healing. Melee mods like healing return or life strike. So just to give you an idea of what kind of loadout to have, my loadout would be a Victus Prime with a Raxtalito Prime that I have modded with punch through, and a melee weapon modded with healing return, for just in case I take damage and need healing. The idea of your loadout is to be as mobile as possible. The less time you spend where enemies can shoot you, the better. Are you in compliance, little Timmy? Why don't you have your notebook out? You should be taking notes of this. Anyway class, on to the next subject. Okay, now to go over some of the tips and tricks and other cool stuff. Little Timmy, you really need to pay attention for this. Ahem. Okay, so the first tip is, all Warframe's powers not including Limbo can affect or damage enemies. Yep, all Warframe's powers work, rather you're in or out of the rift except Limbo, and the reason why Limbo's powers doesn't work on enemies if you're in the opposite plane, it is because Limbo's powers are plane specific. And another cool tip is, any and all status procs made by your weapons on enemies will stay on the enemies through the duration of stasis, which means that enemies that have a slash proc on them will continue to be damaged by that slash proc, and the reason for that is, stasis essentially stops the duration of all status procs but all of the effects will still be applied. Neat. Okay, so, if you have seen my other video on how to use Limbo, you would know that in the game play portion of that video, you would have seen me using the operator to activate a life support system, or should I say, you saw me, Hunter P the wizard face reveal. Anyway, this tip or cool thing is not specific to just Limbo, but all Warframes, any and all Warframes powers that can be applied to allies does not affect the operator in any way, and that includes Limbo's rift mechanic. Don't ask me how or why, I don't work at DE, but I just know that this is a thing. So, how useful is this information? Well, if Limbo has Cataclysm up, and you need to activate something like a life support system, you can use your operator and activate it, or being able to shoot at enemies outside of Cataclysm. Cool, ha, little Timmy. Right, little Timmy. Right. Little Timmy.
We're ready for battle. for a capsule. Seconds left. Additional life support has arrived.